day today. All right, there we go. So the GR4 it is really what we consider to be the ultimate 1-unit rack mixer. It's really great for installations or installers or contractors that need really cost-effective, but still need some comprehensive mixing for stores, cafes, bars, and things like that. So think of if the HM64 is the fully digital, like huge, younger brother, I suppose, of the GR4. The GR4 is a great analog 1-unit mixer. So let's kind of get into some more of the details about that. So at the very fundamentals, the GR4 has an 8-in, 4-out mic line mixer. We also have alarm and paging inputs. We have a PL remote compatibility, which I'll talk about more. We have primary and secondary mic modes on that, which I'll also define for you. We have an emergency mic mode. We have a jukebox mode for music. And again, we'll go into details about these further. So if you don't know what these mean right off the bat, that's okay. We'll get there together. And then we've also got really a big key important part is that we can have the gain and volume rotary controls removed from the face and have them capped so that people who shouldn't be messing with it can't mess with it. I think that's something we've probably all experienced when we set something up and then it's perfect and you walk away and you come back like 2 weeks later or a couple months later and nothing is how you last had it set. So this is going to be lots of security and flexibility are going to come into play here. So a couple of the key benefits for GR4 before we hop into the super technical bits and pieces, as I mentioned, it's really cost effective. We actually changed the pricing and dropped it in May of 2021. And now it's beats the competitors on both technical ability and price as well. So we think that was a fantastic move. If you guys are interested in this, we'll get you the link to the landing page in the chat. You guys can go check it out for yourselves. So as I also mentioned, we've got those paging and alarm inputs where we can integrate with third-party paging stations or evac or fire alarm systems. We have remote control. So even if you don't want them to have access to the front of the panel, we do have the ability to, again, do level control, source control, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But the idea is to give even non-technical users access to the AV equipment. And I've mentioned that before in several of these as well, is it's a balance about having technical ability, like functionality in a piece of equipment, but having it also be accessible to people. It means something different when it can do 10,000 things, but like 3 people on earth know how to use it. That's a very specialized skill set. What we want is high technical functionality and high accessibility for people who are good with tech or are not good with tech. But then we've also got a front mic panel where you can have mic access there easily. We also have a 3.5 millimeter or 1/8 inch jack input for music, like mobile, like iPads and things like that, for mobile music sources. And then we've got, again, that secure operation where we can cap the gain and volume rotaries so people can't get access to it. And it's the Allen Heath build quality and audio quality that we're used to and we expect now. So that is completely extended into the GR4 as well. Nice little glamour shot here. Okay, so let's kind of pop in through here. And as you guys have questions, feel free to enter them into the chat or unmute your mic and say hi. So, okay, so first up, we've got that mic selection on the front where we can pick whether we want to use the rear mic selection or input or that front XLR mic. Somebody asked, are security caps included or sold separate? They are included. Then we've got the XLR input itself. Then we have our input level controls for the 4 mics. Then we've got our stereo input level controls. Then we have our peak indicators. We've got our zone source selection. So where they're routed, where they're going. We have our auxiliary input for those mobile music sources, the 3.5 millimeter or the 1/8 inch, however you like to put it. Then we've got our zone 1 mix. We've got our zone 2 mix, our zone EQ, and the zone 3 level, and the zone 4 level, and of course our power switch as well. On the back, we have our main power, also a Kensington lock. Then we've got these 4 sets of dip switches, and I'll go here in just a minute and break these down even further. But essentially this is part of there's several layers of programming that we can do within the GR4, and these dip switches are a set of those. So first we've got dip switches to change how these different modes are functioning. So this is the jukebox and Vox mode. We can change how those kind of fundamentally function with these dip switches, but we've also got a zone lock, so we can lock out certain zones to prevent people from changing or making any changes afterwards. Then we've also got our remote dip switches. We can change how remote access happens. And we have our logic dip switch, which actually lets us change if we want certain things like normally open and normally closed outputs and things like that. But I will show you with their own slide here in a moment. But also on the back, we've got our alarm input, we've got our page input, we've got our PL remote access, but then we also have the analog zone control for like third party or controls you've made yourself. Then we have our zone outputs. We have our stereo inputs. We have our mic inputs, and there's that mic 1 where we had the XLR in the front, and now we have Phoenix connectors on the back, if that's what you choose. And then we have our mic EQ as well. So I've mentioned the PL remotes a couple of times. And as I mentioned, I've spent some time talking about our IP controllers, but I haven't gotten to spend very much time talking about our PL remotes. So I'm going to take that liberty now. So the PL remotes are essentially wall mountable controls that we can use in tandem with the GR4. It gets power and the control over the CAT. It does not run over Ethernet, so this will be a direct run from that back. I'll even go back here. This, I think you guys can see my mouse. This zone remote, that's where you plug them in. So got that. And they're meant to be really easy deployment, and you can have up to 2 of them per GR4. And they can either daisy, like control separate zones, or one can control another if you'd like. But with that PL remote, we also have the PL5, the infrared version of it. And this can work with the PL14. And you can see that little black square at the bottom right of the PL14. That's the infrared receiver. And so even if you have this mounted on a wall, sometimes people just like having control and walking around. Some people don't like it, but having this as an option is good. So that means you can just have this remote, quickly change sources or change volumes easily with a little mobile, regular remote control. So let's break this down a little bit. So first we've got our source indicators. This is letting them know which one you've selected. And then we have our level indicator, the level of that source in the zone. Then we've got our level control, and we have our source selection up and down features as well, and that infrared sensor that I just mentioned. So I mentioned that you can have up to 2 per GR4. And so we can have 1 remote for each zone, zones 1 or 2, or I can have a remote for both zones. Sometimes if it's a really large room, sometimes you want to have access from multiple points. And you can easily switch that inside of, on the back of the remotes themselves. So it's easy. You can show these little caps, which come with it. And you just cap them off and decide how you'd like them to function. And then if you want to use 2 remotes for room combining, we can do that as well. Gotta love those air walls where we can change those. There we go. And I got a question here. And you can see a little zoom up here where you can disable or enable remotes. Let's go to the chat. Let's see, Palmer asks, are they essentially VCAs or are they sending a custom control protocol? I'm not quite sure how to answer that, Palmer. I don't think that they are. I'd have to do some digging and I can get an answer for you in specifics about how the control data is actually being sent. With it being analog, I was wondering how they talk to each other. Yes, I will look into that and get a specific answer for you. There we go. And I want to talk about another layer of that programming. So let's kind of jump in here. So first, let's start with some definitions because you got to have those. So primary mic mode. So when you select this mode for the GR4 for one of your zones, music is faded to a preset level when an audio signal is sensed on mic 1, or if the page contact is closed, and it also mutes mic 2. So that's primary mic mode. So it's eventually saying it. An example of this would be if it was a mic 1 was a paging area and you had like GPIO where it closed the contact when you wanted to page, it drops the music level, mutes mic 2, and lets mic 1 have the stage, if you will. And secondary mic mode, very similar, is when mic 2 audio is sensed, but it drops the music level. It does not mute mic 1 though. And then we have emergency mic mode, where all of the zone feeds are muted. So anything being sent to any zone is muted, except mic 1 is fed directly to all of the zones when that alarm contact is activated. So it would behave as you would want it to in an emergency. So if something triggered GPIO and closed or opened this contact, depending on how you had it set up, you would want all of the music to stop or all of the audio feeds to quit, and then just mic 1 be an emergency, like, hey, something's going on and everybody needs to be able to hear that. So that's what that is. And then we have jukebox mode, which is a music priority feed. So that's when audio is sensed on stereo input 3, and the current music feed is ducked until stereo 3 input resumes again. And I saw a question pop up. Brent says, if using 2 remotes on one zone, do they display the same settings as adjustments are made? Yeah, if one is following, if one is controlling both, yes, they display the same settings. Otherwise, that would be very confusing. So, okay. There we go. So you can get into this programming mode, and you can actually change more bits and bobs. So we have the dip switches and we have all these different kinds of modes, but now we can change how some of the programming functions on another level. So you can get into program mode by holding down the 2 select buttons while you power on the unit. The power LED flashes and you go into program mode. And then you can actually change depending on which LEDs are lit, how things are functioning. And I've got a little table for you. Let me go back one. So the second set of LEDs toggle through the parameters, and the zone 1 selections, the mic 1 and mic 3 LEDs rather, indicate the value of that parameter. So let me give you a table. It's fantastic. So in this mode, we can actually change our ducker attenuation. We can change the ducker hold time and the release time. We can also change our crossfade time for our music, the jukebox attack time, the hold time, or the release time as well. The gold pieces, the gold highlighted pieces, are the default. So when you pull it out of the box, these are how they're set. Okay. So I love flexibility. We know we've talked about security, and we've already talked about several ways to program this, but I kind of want to take it even a step further. So you may recall these dip switches I mentioned. So we've got this alarm input. It's contact closure. And we can pick if we want it to be normally open or normally closed for the emergency input. And on activation, all of the inputs will fade to the preset level except for mic 1. And the zone 1 and zone 2 LEDs will flash quickly to let you know, hey, this is happening. And it will return to normal once that closure opens back up or goes back to its default state, then it resumes. Same with the page. We can change it between normally open and normally closed, and we can decide how we'd like it to react. So with these dip switches, so we've got that Vox and jukebox dip switches. So these are what they do. So we can change the mic 1 level paging detect. So we can switch as the primary mode on or off. We have also mic 2 through 4 level paging to detect, and we can also activate jukebox mode in zones 1 and zone 2. But then we've got our zone lock, which means we can lock the music select switch the mic select switch or the music select switch for zones 1 and for zone 2. So if we want only one specific thing happening in a zone at any given time, we can lock that out and make sure nobody changes it. And with dip switches, that gives us another, like that real security, just like if we're able to cap some of those rotary controls on the front, we set it up and we don't necessarily want people touching it a lot. So we want to be able to keep that secure, but still have the flexibility to change what we need. So then we have our remote dip switches. And this can basically say, I can enable or disable zone 1 remote control volume or source select for zones 1 and zone 2. And then we have our logic where we can invert the page and the alarm. So that means we can change whether they're normally open or normally closed, depending on how we'd like it to function or how the unit we're using with it, like the paging microphone or your fire system actually functions. So, and then we have the phantom power, select for mic 1 or mics 2 through 4 and or 2 through 4. So security meets flexibility. These are like the hot words for the GR4. So I'll show you this little shot. This is actually, you can pop open this bad boy. All in the name of flexibility and programmability, but keeping it secure so that people can't like go in and mess with things. Now, this is a shot of when you pop that lid open, that we have all these different locations. Just wanted to show it to you. So now I'll zoom in. What do these mean? Is really the key part. So we use jumpers that we can actually change how certain things function. So this is yet another level of that programmability that we want without having to sacrifice security. So first we can change our high pass filters for our mics. We can change the gain on our stereo inputs. We can change our zone 1 and zone 2 gain. Move this, go up here. I can make my zones mono if I would like. And I can change my zone 3 and my zone 4 mix. And those actually have their own special little markers as well. So our zone 3 and our zone 4 matrix, we can pick to be copies of zone 1 and zone 2, just send them right over there as is. We can also have them just be fed with a mic or our mics 2 through 4, or we can have them be fed with stereo 3 input and stereo input 4. And we've got those level controls on the front as well. So as a couple of examples of where these might be used, I think it's always really good to have context for these pieces of equipment, because when left to our own devices, you could do so much. So this would be an example of if you used every single possible connection on the GR4, this is what that system might look like. So we've got, move that, there we go. So we've got our jukebox music line, we have a laptop, we've got CD players going, plus we have a mobile, an iPod. I still have mine and I use it happily, but we also have a TV, we've got paging mics, multiple mics in different areas of this imaginary venue. We've got our fire alarm, PL14s, plus some third-party remotes as well. And we can see all the different zones we're sending to, whether they're 100-volt speakers or active speaker systems as well. So this is if you used every single connection on the GR4, which is quite a bit. And then we've got a sort of retail space, if you will. So we may have a couple of line inputs, maybe some background music. You got to have your emergency system as well. Again, we've got those PL14 remotes. We've got all of our speaker areas, and we have our volume control with those third-party ones as well. Then we've got maybe a small office where we have Skype audio or Teams. Do many people use Skype these days? Zoom, we're on Zoom right now, so it could be Zoom audio. But then we also have meeting room mics, a paging mic or a priority call input. We've got our emergency system as always. And again, we want remote control, wall mounts, as well as mobile remotes with the PL5s and going into the appropriate zone. So a small office, this would be perfect as well. Sometimes you don't need 10,000 features. Sometimes you just want 9,999 features. Another one would be a bar or a restaurant where they've got some stage mics. They've got the local input over at the bar or the restaurant. We've got a satellite TV. There's always, can't get away from TVs anymore. We've also got our CD and DVD players, our EVIC system, and our priority or paging mics. And again, as many zones as we see necessary, especially when we're using tandem with amplifiers, being able to send audio exactly where it needs in these small to medium-sized venues. So, is there any questions? This was this was a lot of information on a lot of slides. So please feel free to ask away. I'll even go back to, I like this one a lot. Any questions, anything you guys are curious about? Because several of you guys had not even heard of this or seen it before. So what are your thoughts or questions on usability, where you might be seeing this? I'd love to hear more about that. I'll open up my chat here. There we go. Awfully quiet today. Didn't know it existed. Well, now you do, William. Oh, there we go. William says $4.99 is a nice price. You bet. You bet it is. Okay, let me scroll up here. Palmer says, how do the stereo inputs behave if you only plug in mono sources? It would be, I'm imagining you'd be only getting the left side, but that is something I can confirm for you because they are stereo, like analog stereo, you only be getting the left side or the right side. And you'd be, because if we go back here. Is that the map? Nope. Going way back. Let's see here. Where are you hiding at? There we go. Yeah, if you just use one side, I mean, you'll only be getting one side. I mean, if you're using a stereo input and you're doing mono zones anyways, they're getting summed. So it would kind of depend on how your zones would be set up. Then we've got, let's see. Yeah, got the pricing. How do we control the 8 inputs using the PL remotes? Yeah, you would assign specifically which ones you would want. And there's a, I should get the link for you guys for the documentation on this. It lets you know exactly what the jumpers do, how you want to actually program the PL14s and things like that. That'll specify explicitly how to do those 8 inputs. Let's see here. Yeah, okay, answer that. Jim R says, it seems like the internal dip switches can be set and then reprogrammed by the external programming. When you use the dip switches, that's a hard program. But then you can change kind of down the line how that signal is being processed. So like there's only one place where you can lock out zones. We don't let you change that later. So every layer of our programming is not quite independent, but it is independent. So you can change it and you can program it one way, and it does affect things downstream of that, but we don't give you a downstream option to negate what you've hard programmed using the dip switches or the jumpers. There we go. Okay. Any other questions? Anything you guys are curious about, they want to see? Yes. Somebody says, would I be able to see this video again? Yes, I record this, but I also have, if you send me an email or go to the Allen Heath All Install event page, I did a similar presentation and it's available on recording there, and you could go watch that. Let's see, this line about fan to power on inputs 2 through 4 had an asterisk next to it. I'm assuming it's a notation about the voltage, but I do not know what the asterisk means specifically. Okay, any other questions? Got some fun name misspelling in the comments there. That's funny. All good, Brent, I'm sure. Okay, well, I will leave this open. If you guys have a question about GR4 or anything else that you've come across since you've seen me last or since the last mini masterclass, I'll hang out here and I'll even dig up a couple of links for you guys and paste them or find answers to those questions that I could not answer right now. I'll go find those. But otherwise, you guys are free to go. And thank you very much for joining.
What's our forum page so I can make a request?
The community forum for a feature request, is that what you mean?
Yeah, I recently purchased a QUSB, which also I didn't know existed. And right in time, because I did one of my regular bands at a private backyard gig on Saturday, and there was no room to set up my SQ and a table and Cat5, and it worked perfectly. And I noticed that the QU mix pad does not do RTA. And I pushed and pushed, and we got that into the SQ. Yay!
Yep, you did. Yeah.
But but I just wanted to see if
Yeah, so you want to go to community.allen-heath.com. That's where those forms are. So if you have a specific request or you want to see a GR8 or anything like that, head over there. We do grab ideas from there, as well as when Bangs like put them up the flagpole as well.
okay,
So
I didn't see a link on your actual Allen and Heath website. Like I looked all over for a community, link or something.
yeah,
That's why.
let me paste it in here into the chat so we can have it. There we go. Paste. There you go. Okay, so at the top of my brain is the asterisk by the 2 through 4 phantom power. So let's go get that. Ah, okay. Is Palmer still on here? Nope.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Oh, there you are. Pete, you're like directly next to my own video, so I don't know why I didn't see that. Okay, the asterisk is because you can disconnect the individual phantom powers to each of the mic inputs in an internal link as well. And how you specifically do that is in the documentation, the user guide for the GR4, which I will also link here. But you don't have to have phantom power on 2 through 4, all of them. You can disconnect where necessary. There you go.
That is wonderful. I cooked the headphone amps on 2 iPhones by plugging them into phantom power.
2 iPhones. That's a lot of iPhones to lose. Oh, that hurts to hear.
Yeah, it was when they first came out. So the genius part had no comprehension of how would you send voltage into the headphone jack. So I got away with it.
Oh man. And the other question was about the PL14 installation and use. So let me paste that here as well. There you go. How to specifically program those inputs with the PL14 in conjunction with the GR4. And let's tell you exactly how to do it. Okay, I think that was all the questions that I had that I did not have an immediate